Hey there. I don't have a lot of battery left, or memory. But I think I might have more memory than battery. Much like my life. Running low on energy, but a lot of stuff to remember. It is MLK Day. It's Martin Luther King Day, 2014. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about, this will be the first of a number of statements that I make about racism in this country. And now I have been called racist a number of times this year because I started off because I decided to, I get a lot of my feedback on Facebook because it's the only place I know where I can get into an open dialogue with several hundred people. I have 1,300 friends, and it's pretty much stable there. I get friended pretty often because I'm out a lot. And, people know about me a little bit, but I get unfriended pretty damned often as well because I say something that is just not politically correct. And when the Trayvon Martin thing came up, in the face of virtually a united uproar of, oh my God, look at this racist shooting, I said, well, let's wait and see. Because so many times in the past we found that it was not a racist shooting. I can, give you, or a racist incident. I give you a couple examples. There was the professor whose name escapes me, who was caught by the police breaking into his own house that resulted in the beer summit at the White House. Mr. Obama's first really silly move to have those two, because it had to be brokered. Two guys of different races had a differing opinion. We're going to have to broker this at the highest levels of the nation. We're going to have to broker this at the White House with the president himself presiding. What a goofball thing that was, but I digress. There was that one. There was the famed Amadou Diallo shooting in the Bronx, which at this moment, Springsteen's new album has a song on it called 41 Shots, which is about that incident and blatantly calls it racism. Now, if Springsteen had bothered to read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, he would see that Malcolm Gladwell, a gentleman of some renown on the left and acceptance among academics and intellectuals, and a man who is precisely as African-American as Barack Obama is, says in no uncertain terms that it was not a racial incident. As tragic as it had nothing to do with racism. The men who were shot, Amadou Diallo, I hope I'm pronouncing his name at least close, I've read it a lot and I'm not sure I've heard it, the men who shot him were not driven by racist motives at all. They didn't have any history of racism, and it was one of those tragic things that played out, and I'll let you read it for yourself. Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink. It's a chapter called 7 Seconds in the Bronx, I believe. But and this happens most of the time. It's something that we think is a racist event. It really has nothing to do with that. It's actually just two people are on the opposite side of a dispute, one of whom happens to be black and one of whom happens to be white. So we make the assumption that there's a racial motivation. I'm certain that this is not what Martin Luther King had in mind, that people would focus on one another's colors to the exclusion of all other facts automatically. But this is in fact what people do. And this is because there is an industry about it, and people have been encouraged to get an advantage by using that. People of color, you're allowed to say people of color, you're not allowed to say colored people. You will be in serious trouble if you say colored people, but people of color is quite nice. So, okay, move the goalpost, keep me guessing. So you can, people of color have been encouraged by any number of people, Spike Lee among them, Reverend Jackson among them, and certainly Al Sharpton and lesser players like that, have made it a virtual industry to keep people mad, perpetually aggrieved over one thing or another. And it's sort of like a ticking bomb that anything can set off. And it's entirely the fault of overreaction on the part of the people who buy into that. It wouldn't have any traction if nobody bought into it. But there are an awful lot of people, I think mostly they reside on the left end of the political spectrum, and mostly they have very little real life experience with crime or anything like that, or probably with people of color. And they are tremendously frightened of being called racist. And racist is a curse word. To call somebody a racist is a lot worse than it would be if somebody called somebody a nigger. You know, just to say that word, we'll probably get this video taken off YouTube. If I was to call somebody the N-word, we'll revert to the politically correct way of referring to a word. How do you like that? We're not even allowed to say a word when we're not using it as a descriptor of a person. We can't even use the word, because that's the fascism of the left. We will stop your mere, we will inhibit your freedom of expression every way that we can. But if I was to call somebody that, I would just look like an idiot. I would just be declaring, okay, dumb shit over here, hello, dumb shit, and it would say nothing derogatory whatsoever about the person I called that. It's not, so calling somebody that in this day and age is not a curse upon the person that you call it. Not an effective one, at least. It only hurts the person who's used it. However, if you use the term racist to describe somebody, you can put a curse on that person. So if a person who has used the N-word, as insignificant as that really is in the world, like the woman that recently got thrown off the television cook. I'm a little out of the TV loop lately, but she lost her career because it was said that she had used the N-word years before. And it didn't matter at all that she employed black people and that they liked her just fine. What's her name? Laura Deen? No, something Dean. It didn't matter at all that she was employing black people. It didn't matter at all what she may have, what her track record of treating people was. It mattered that you're not allowed to use that word. You are not allowed to use that word. I'm quite certain this is not what Martin Luther King was getting at. Martin Luther King was getting at least by my reading of it, he was trying to make color a non-factor, not the ultimate factor, not that everything revolved around that. I've coined a term, and I think it's a horrible thing that's going on. I've coined a term that I call black nosing, which is to treat black people with an obsequiousness that I believe is in itself racist. That if you are afraid to disagree with a black person, if a black person is in the discussion in liberal circles, and everybody's putting their opinion in, and the black person says something, if you disagree, everyone squirms, everyone freaks out. And believe me, this has been my experience a number of times. I lived in a town called Altadena for quite a long time. Altadena is described in its city stats as 40% white, 40% black, and 20% other. The other being equal parts Hispanic and Armenian, roughly. So, but it's a place where blacks and whites live on about equal footing. There's a little coffee house there called the Coffee Gallery, and there was for a long time. I lived there for 8 years within close walking distance of it. So I was often over there on Saturday and Sunday mornings, and there was a big round table called, creatively enough, the Round Table. And all the local wags and opinion makers and people like me who like to talk would meet there and discuss whatever was on the news that day. And they were about half white and half black. Now you would see on the parts of the most self-declared liberal and enlightened an absolute reluctance to disagree with black people. Because the being black made you different. It didn't mean that you were just a person who was there whose skin tone happened to be a different color. You were different. You needed to be treated with kid gloves as a way of showing respect. Well, that is a way of showing no respect. Let's be realistic here. If a person is afraid to disagree with you, they don't take you seriously. They're not really listening. Their belief then is that, oh, well, a black person can't be expected to really process things as well as we do, so we have to make allowances. And if I say a dumb shit thing, which I do on a regular basis, believe me, nobody I know hesitates to tell me, boy, that was a dumb shit thing you said, Dave. Unless they're looking to get something out of me. Unless I have some power over them. And they're afraid of me in some way. Well, these people are afraid of black people. They're afraid, either for whatever reason, they're afraid that they will be themselves called racist, mostly, is what they're afraid of, in the way that they've called others that. And I remember one particular conversation. I was talking with a guy who's a news director at an LA affiliate, network affiliate. This guy lives in San Marino and could buy me and sell me 10 or 12 times over. And a very nice guy, and a very smart guy. But we were into a discussion about real estate, and I had just returned from a road trip, and I had visited with people who lived adjacent to a housing development where they had really built some oversized houses and weren't selling them. Well, he and another woman, also black, he and a woman who was a real estate agent, were talking about investing in big properties. I believe it was in the Atlanta area. And I just said, the age of the big house is going to go out. People are starting to think that who really wants to have extra bedrooms they don't live in? I said, that's going to go out. And he was not happy that I was disagreeing with him. And it was a venue for disagreement, for discussion. And he got really pissed off at me that I didn't just grant him that he was unfailingly correct. I think he was in a cranky mood and probably had a little too much caffeine in him. But at one point he said, and I wasn't being a dick about it. I was just saying, well, this is what I've seen and this is what I've heard and read. I was just trying to add some helpful information to the thing. But at a given point, he said, you know what? I've had enough of your redneck bullshit. And there had been no mention whatsoever of anything remotely connected to race. It wasn't that black people can't afford big houses, nothing like that. It was talking about whether or not the trend at the time toward 3,500 square foot floor plans was going to continue or not. That's all that it was about. But he actually felt it was okay to bring a racial element in because obviously he was having trouble with my argument and with my facts, and maybe he felt disarmed a little bit and possibly that he was being wrong. But I think really what it was is he just wasn't used to anybody challenging him. Whereas I'm completely used to people challenging me. People challenge me all the time. I mean, I post things on Facebook and I go to work and I come home, I've been eviscerated for 8 hours in my absence. People have been telling me what a dick I am for 8 hours. Or just how wrong I am. But if I was black, those very same people would say, interesting idea. I'll have to think about this, but good to see you thinking things through. I could say anything if I was black and get away with that same group of liberal people. And this is a type of racism, because what you're saying is that black people are intrinsically different than white people. They can't be held to the same standard. That's not a show of faith in somebody to say, we're going to have to cover for this one here. We're going to all agree not to disagree with this one here, because, black person. And this is a terrible, terrible thing. But there is, and along with this has come a sort of ill ease among a certain type of black person, particularly a type of black person that sort of runs in multiple circles and runs across this a lot, as certainly they do. It's the same problem that you have with color-based affirmative action. I'm all for affirmative action if it's based on intellectual environment and or opportunity. I'm all for making some allowance for people of all color if they are bright but have come from an intellectually impoverished background. I'm all for finding those folks and helping them to get to the intellectual level where they belong and can flourish. But to say that that has anything to do with color is, again, racist. That's saying that a black person is automatically going to need help. I've said on many occasions that I believe that our president is president today because he's black. It's not in spite of him being black, it's because he's black. He did not grow up in the south side of Detroit or Chicago. Does Detroit have a south side? I think it's Chicago, I'm thinking. Well, I should stick with LA, which I know. He didn't grow up in the south central LA. He didn't grow up with some sort of hard scrabble existence that was brought upon him due to the color of his skin. I know the kinds of people that he grew up among. I was in Hawaii a great deal during the very period of time that he was in high school. I'm a little older than him, and I was living in Hawaii at the time and was on Oahu quite frequently. I know what the political climate was like on Oahu, and you could have fewer things that would advantage you better than being a handsome, intelligent, well-spoken young black person. Few things could advantage you more, and certainly he was quite advantaged anyway. He had a well-off grandmother who was a banker, and he had family connections and things like that, and he went to really good schools. He is not an example of the horrible problems endemic to a society that was, cursed with racism as a result of slavery. I mean, his ancestors weren't even here. Neither were mine. I'm not going to feel guilty over every black person because some other people somewhere hurt somebody that happened to be the color of them, and those people that hurt them were the color of me. Again, racism. To ask anybody to feel guilty because of something that some other people did who happen to share a skin color is, again, a focus on color as if color has any bearing. The whole of what Martin Luther King was about was erasing the false qualification of color to say that, you can accurately judge a group of people by the tone of their skin. That is all that racism is. And if you do it and say that all people who are black are therefore wonderful, therefore we should really befriend them, we should do whatever we can. That's as racist as saying that no black people are worthy of your friendship, because it is race-based thinking, and it's therefore inherently wrong. So, we're going to see it played out again. The Democrats are so nervous about this stuff. What is it? Are they afraid of what they really feel? Are they? I think that they are, and I'll tell you why. Racism is not an evil. To act upon racism in an evil way is an evil. Actions are evil. To believe that race has something qualifying about a person is a mistaken belief that is rooted to our background on this planet. The in-group, out-group, is what it is. You see somebody who's different than you, naturally it gives you pause and hesitation. This is a survival mechanism. Everybody has a little of that. And when you've had a culture of people who were segregated for a long period of time and developed a cultural difference because they were interacting mainly with people of their same color, now they've got a cultural difference. And that's odd and scary. We don't understand it quite. We don't know what the etiquettes are. And so that's a little bit troubling. Now, if I'm a little bit troubled by that, I just go, oh, I'm just a little bit troubled by that. I'm a little freaked out by this culture I don't understand. I don't suspect that I'm a racist and therefore overreact by, which is a sort of a performance. I hope everyone sees and views me being extra warm with this person of color here. Telling an anecdote about some dumb white person, getting in there and joking around, about the dumb white people. That is so bogus. What an a-hole move that is. I hope and you know exactly that what I'm saying is true. And this is what I call black nosing. And I think that probably Barack Obama, and this isn't a knock on Barack Obama. I voted for him the first time, and I actually lately I see real signs of him really learning about what the world is. But he knows he's smart enough that he was probably the smartest guy in the room a lot of times, but maybe no smarter than the smartest guy in a room not too far away who happened to be white. He knew that his advantage came from the fact that he was black. He knew he was getting advantages because of that. And so he played on that. He went to Chicago and he went to a church, not because he was interested in that sort of nationalist Christianity that we've talked about now with Reverend Wright. No. Because that's what you have to do in the black community. You have to win people over by establishing your black cred. Now, a guy from that had been to, I wanted to say finishing school, but prep school in Hawaii, and had only one black parent, and not a black parent who grew up in the crucible of the South or anything. He had to establish some black cred, so he went to a black church. That's all it was. It's, we can't say anything about his beliefs by what Reverend Wright was spouting. I suspect that Obama is, as so many intellectuals are, a skeptic about the fact of God at all. And I don't hold any of this against him. He wanted to get into politics. He knew what he had to do. But along the way, he certainly knew that he was getting allowances because of his color by the white people in power in those circles who were busy proving to one another how advanced they were. And this makes a black person a pawn. And in the case of Barack Obama, it's a good pawn. I mean, he's benefited hugely. I just heard today he's going to get somewhere between $17 and $20 million for his memoirs when he's done. And as I've written before, he will certainly light up the speaker circuit forever. And, the liberals, they had to get a black president. They had to. I mean, they watched the Republicans steal the first black Secretary of State from them, and then the first black female Secretary of State. What? And they weren't going to lose this. They got this guy so presentable because, boy, this is the classic example of looks black, talks white. And, it's, again, no derogation meant toward the president. But they really were going to run with this one. They were going to run with this one. And this is not only something you see. I'm running out of time here. I'll probably lose the camera very soon. But this is not something that's only present on the left. It's present on the right as well. There's this very concerted effort to show that we have black heroes. Thomas Sowell is a more important economist than a guy saying something just like him, who's not black. Walter Williams has gotten more traction because he's black. And
conservative. And so the conservatives are always looking for a conservative that they can put up. I mean, even so far as the Tea Party back